Yo, what's good? Big Z here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make smooth and natural sounding transitions between different parts of your song. So as an example, I'm going to use this track I'm working on where there's no transition yet between the break and the build-up. So I'm going to go ahead and make the whole transition in front of you guys so you can kind of see what goes through my head when I'm transitioning between two parts of a song. So here's what it sounds like now with no transition at all. So the goal of a transition is to merge two sections together in a way that sounds natural. So it signals to the listener that something new is coming up, but it doesn't just jump straight to that new part without anything in between. So to make it natural, there's a couple little tricks and tips you can use to make it sound better. So an easy thing to do to start a transition is kind of cut some of the drums or synths off right before the transition happens, and then kind of introduce some new parts from the next section, like a bar before the transition happens. I'll show you what I mean. So right here, I'm going to cut all these drums back a bar completely. So that's a good start. I'm going to add a sample there to make it sound a little cleaner. So I'm going to go into my sample folder here and see if I can find something that'll work. I have this folder called Sweet Transitions that has a lot of good stuff in it like this. All those types of samples are really good for transitions, but I think this one is going to work well. It's a really clean sounding cymbal roll, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to go ahead and send it to my drum bus and to my drum reverb real quick. I'm going to mix it in, and I got to make sure it's lined up correctly because I want it to start right here. So now let's see what it sounds like with that in there. So I think I'm going to do a little fill here with one quarter note left. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all the synths off right there. So I'm going to add some kind of snare fill in there. It's good to add some kind of fill in your transitions just to make them a lot more interesting. So let's see what we can get going here. I'm going to go into my snares folder and see what I got. I'm going to go ahead and use this snare, and I'm going to bring that up here and do the same thing, send it to my drum bus and my drum reverb, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it here, see what the volume sounds like. So a good thing to do in any transition is use a lot of reverses to signal what's coming next. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I reverse stuff with this snare right here. So I'm going to duplicate this snare and bring it down here and just solo this track for now while I work on this. So what I'm going to do is actually reverse this snare by clicking this reverse button here. I'm going to fade it out and fade it in a little bit so it's smoother. I'm going to turn this drum reverb off. I'm going to add my own Valhalla Room reverb onto this reverse sample now. And what I usually do is bring the pre-delay all the way down, mix all the way up, high cut all the way up, and then I mess around with the reverb mode. I like the large chamber mode, and I'm going to see what this decay sounds like. And a lot of times I like to add a little OTT right after the reverb, just to make the reverb tail a little stronger. So now that I have that going, I'm going to create a folder so I can bounce this in place. So I'm going to bounce it right here to a new track. I'll call it Reverse Snare. And now I'm going to delete that old file. And now I'm going to reverse this new file that I have. And I'm going to cut off the head of it because that will just be the original sample. So I'm going to cut off that part so it's just the reverb tail. And now I'm going to make it start right on this 36 bar. I'm going to fade it in a little bit so it's more natural sounding, and that'll lead right up to this snare. So let's see what that sounds like in the context of the whole transition now. Alright, so it's sounding pretty good so far. There's definitely some more things I can do to make this whole transition sound smoother. So I like to add like a low impact going to my buildups a lot of the time. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to do one of those here. So this is the folder where I keep all these impact sounds. Here's what some of them sound like. So I think I'm going to use this one, impact 11. I'm going to drag it in my project here. I'm going to bring it up to the rest of the transition samples up here. I'm going to line it up with the grid so it's on beat. Looks like it kind of starts right there. Let's see how that sounds. Alright, so it's definitely sounding a lot better with that sample on there now. I'm going to go ahead and rename it real quick just to keep it organized. I'm going to make these the same color as the rest of my drum samples. Okay, now one thing I haven't done yet is take something from the next section, which is the build, and bring it back into the verse to kind of introduce it a little bit. So for that, I'm going to use these chords, I think, that come in the build. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to drag this MIDI file back here and just use one of these chords that ends the bar right here and kind of filter it in so it tells the listener, okay, this new sound is coming in now. So let's see what chord it's going to be. I think it's going to be this chord right here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the rest of these notes. I don't know exactly where I want it to start yet. Okay, so I think I'm going to want it to be the whole bar. So I'm going to make it the whole bar up until that snare fill hits. And what I'm going to do is I have this filter on these chords, so I'm going to slowly filter in this chord until it hits that snare fill. So I'm going to go into the automation and automate that real quick. So I'm going to go here, single EQ frequency, and then I'm going to mess around with this filter right here. And I think that sounds pretty good just like that. As you can see, it just slowly introduces that chord, and it sounds really cool when you filter it in like that. So let's see how this overall transition is sounding now. Okay, I think I just need one more thing to finish it all off, and that would be a downlifter when the build-up starts. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my sample pack and go into the downlifter section. I think this one will be fine. I'm going to bring it up with the rest of the samples and make sure it's on the grid in the right spot. And then I'm probably going to add some reverb and kind of some ping pong delay just to give it some space in the mix. Let's see how that sounds and get the volume level right. Okay, I think the transition is completely finished now. So if you'll remember, this is what we started with. And now we end up with a much smoother transition that sounds like this. So hopefully this video was helpful to you guys. Make sure to follow me on Spotify and Instagram below. Other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.